Page 43. Life kept no more a dull and meaningless shape. In the struggle and upheaval of the world, he saw the labor of a Godhead's birth, a secret knowledge masked as ignorance, fate covered with an unseen necessity, the game of chance of an omnipotent will. This is what the illumined mind, illumined by intuition, illumined by vision, opens up to the seer, the seeker of knowledge. Otherwise, normally you say life is a world of attachment, of difficulties. So if one concentrates only on the higher chakras and the higher seats of consciousness, one withdraws from the world. But he has seen that the whole passage that has gone before, the plunging down of the light into the darkness in different images, in different forms, and from below, from within, the working of that force of light slowly making evolution of consciousness, manifesting that consciousness. And so if that is the whole plan, there is no need to give up this outer earthly life. What we have to give up is our ignorance, is our attachment to the surface understanding, surface mind, the surface life, because behind all, the working of the divine consciousness is continuous. So it was no longer, therefore, something that has to be given up. Life is the field of experience. And all knowledge is valid only when it is lived. It is not knowledge that is simply acquired by mind, which is what Pandits do. So you have to live that in the world of experience, continuous, and that is what Mother emphasizes. She gives us all the chances to take up so many activities in life. It is not what you do. She keeps on saying it is the consciousness with which you do what you do. It is the attitude, it is your inner participation of the spirit. If your spirit participates in what you are doing, by spirit I mean your, what she calls the psychic being, the divine presence, and that is there in the world of life. She says, go deep into the heart and you will find there the divine presence. It is always there. The heart center, it is the higher life. The lower life, which has its connections with the subconscious, takes longer to accept the play of harmony and light and joy. These are expressions that the higher life really wants to arrive at. The lower life still wants so many, it is pulled by different impulsions, desires. It takes longer. But the play of energy is in everything, even in matter. The play of consciousness is much slower to emerge, but it is the foundation. And therefore, we have these three different, you might say, inertia, tamas, and rajas, and sattva, the different states. But tamas, behind the term tamas, you have repose. That is the fundamental divine, you might say, base, which is covered by darkness. In the world of rajas, which is force, which is often confusion, which is dynamic, you need dynamism, otherwise nothing can really be put into expression. But the play of the ego becomes much more evident, and so the tendency is to lose the way. But if one can hold on to the divine consciousness behind the world of rajas, nothing can be done without the participation of the vital. No achievement can be done. It cannot be fulfilled, it cannot be really manifested, because the vital is the source of strength. Sattva, it's the higher existence, is not simply a world of light and truth. It is the world of harmony which harmonizes these things. So this is the labor. Because the possibilities of divinizing this earthly life are inherent in our earthly being. He realizes this. He saw the labor as if something that is really attempting a new birth, a new manifestation, and this is done by the Shakti. So she is the mother power. She is working out the beginning of a change, of a new manifestation, a new world, a secret knowledge which is being slowly worked out below the surface. On the surface, nothing is apparent. So, masked as ignorance. If we also look at ourselves, we find, of course, that we are ignorant. There is so much darkness and dullness and inertia and unconsciousness. But we don't realize that if we look deeper within, there is no moment in time where the divine grace is not there. It is working. If we turn towards that, if we, in a sense, collaborate with that, then our journey becomes faster. It reminds me of a New Year message Mother gave, where she asks, will you help? Perhaps by saying, will you help, is will you collaborate? Will you stop hindering? Because we hinder. With our egos, that is the biggest hindrance. We put in our own opinions, our own ideas, our own thoughts. If that is wiped off, and we allow the divine to work through us, because it is a tremendous privilege to be a human being. The human being alone can evolve from the lesser to the greater. The gods cannot. The demons cannot. The creatures below the human do not. The creatures above the human do not need. They are all projections of the emanations of the divine. Man is the intermediary being. Therefore, it is through man that a new possibility of manifestation takes place. If man participates, collaborates, permits, we don't have to do anything. We have to just let her work in us. But for that, we have to remove our own thinkings, our own opinions, our own preferences. Preferences are very disturbing. You say, please do this for me, please do it like this, I don't want this. All those things have to be cancelled. She will work in her way, her ways are not always ours. Sometimes she will hurt, what we may call hurt. She will break down our resistances, our oppositions. So it's a labor. It's like a sculptor breaking down the resistance of the rock in order to bring out the beautiful image. So fate, covered with an unseen necessity. Necessity is a law. Necessity has many meanings, but one of them is the law that is inherent to something. Within the existence, there is an inherent principle or law, which you could say, for instance, in the material world, the law of gravitation. Something will fall, not because it is made to fall. It is inherent to the substance of matter that what goes up comes down. It's part of it. It's not but when we live, our man is a more complex being, he has different elements in his nature, and so we say, what will be the ultimate end? The ultimate end, which might be even death or failure, is part of the inherent plan. It is not a smooth road, it's not a straight road. Sri Aurobindo, when you're talking of the letters of Sri Aurobindo, he says it is not a Grand Trunk road. which went from Bengal to Peshawar or something like that. It's not a straightforward road. It is difficult. There are canyons, there are risings, there are fallings, but then that's what makes even the falls strengthens and encourages and teaches us that we have to be ready for a greater and more difficult goal. So it is a game essentially played by an omnipotent will. But we don't see the will. We see things happening, our ignorant vision, it's very narrow vision. The more ignorant we are, the more narrow our vision. So you said?
Game of chance.
Yeah, I know, I haven't read the line. The game of chance, of an omnipotent will. So we use the word chance because we fail to see the full plan. We see only just that particular moment. We are unaware of how did this thing happen. So we call it chance. Chance does not in itself exist. Chance is part of the vocabulary of ignorance. Worse, a vocabulary of partial knowledge. Partial knowledge is even more difficult to get over because it gives you the sense of, I know something. And that heightens the sense of the intellectual ego. So since we can't see the cause, when something happens, if I can see a cause, I can recognize the effect. But when I can't see the cause of something, which is beyond my vision, beyond my understanding, I see only something happening, I call it chance. It is my failure to be able to see the whole plan. Everything is very well chalked out, worked out. It is a law of causality, in a sense, a spiritual causality. There is a cause, there is an effect. But when I don't know the cause, I only see the effect. I call it chance. What there is, otherwise in itself, there is no such thing as chance. It is because I fail to understand what is the cause. Why am I the way I am? I don't know. Well, if I am at least a little humble, I say I don't know. Otherwise, if I am not so humble, I revolt, or I get angry with others or with God or whatever. This is not fair, this is not right, He should have made the world like this or like that, and all sorts of things. Because everything has to suit our, you might say, conveniences. He follows His plan. So the game of chance of an omnipotent will. So you have will, which is a conscious force, which is also in the consciousness. It is not only force. It is something that is working out a plan that will arrive finally at its ultimate goal. And so again you have a New Year message. I think it is in 1957, where she says that she speaks of the time will come when even the most hostile, the most blind, the most resistant person will be obliged to accept the supramental change. Because mind is so strong that it doesn't believe in the supermind. Mind has been a governor for so long, governing our lives for so many centuries, that it finds it difficult to accept the control of a higher, superior plane of consciousness. So will is a power not of the mind, but of a greater consciousness. But it is a power. But this is not so with Ashwapati. He has become an instrument of this force. This is why this is the yoga of the soul's release. He is not trapped in ignorance anymore. A glory and a rapture and a charm. Charm is magic, in a sense. Charm is like a spell that is put on you. You don't know what is there is a certain attraction of beauty, of joy, of inexplicable magic in the divine. The all blissful sat unknown within the heart. He's always there. Mother has repeatedly told us, I'm always there. But we don't look within. He does. And He's always there, smiling, guiding, loving. Because if this love were not there, there would be no universe. At the core of all things, the divine grace and the divine love. It is one of the most beautiful lines. Sri Aurobindo loved it very much. I think it is Virgil. He says it's an overmental line, the Roman poet. He says, that love that moves the suns and the other stars. L'amore che muove il sole e le altre stelle. I don't know if it's Dante or Virgil, but it's an overmental line. The sense, that vision of the poet who sees that the whole universe is really being guided by a sublime love. Not only us, but the suns and the stars, and those even other worlds that we don't even know exist, the other stars. There are so many planes and so many worlds beyond our vision, beyond our understanding. In every different corner of the universe, that same play of grace and harmony is always there. We clash because we are centered in our tremendous, you might say, structure of the ego. It is that which is the biggest problem. It's a product of ignorance. But in him, that ego was dead. The all blissful sat unknown within the heart. Earth's pains were the ransom of its prison delight. So that Ananda is now emerging. Up to now it was imprisoned. And in order to let the, you might say, the inner inhabitant come out of the prison, the breaking down of the surface nature, the breaking down of the pride and the ego and the sense of superficial importance, which is earth's pain. We don't want to give up. So we often have to undergo suffering. Suffering is a very good teacher. Every difficulty is an opportunity, as Mother tells us. It's an opportunity for change. If you make use of that opportunity, then you move very fast. If you resist that opportunity, it will come back again, and again, and again. So this is earth's pains. So we had not to run away from suffering. This is what man wants to. He wants to live a very safe and comfortable life, which is why he remains the same. He has remained more or less the same over centuries and centuries. But if he is willing to accept things as they are, not invite pain, that is not the thing. It is that there are certain yogas which invite, which want to invite difficulties and pain. Mother says that is not the attitude. They will come anyway, at some time or the other. So we have to face whatever is given with the same attitude that this is something that has been given to me by the divine power, which is also love, which is also knowledge, which is wisdom. And if it has come to me, the best thing I can do is make use of it. Use the experience like a stepping stone to move ahead, to move forward. So earth's pains were the ransom of its prison delight. A glad communion tinged the passing hours. Life becomes a play of joy. Communion is an inner spiritual connection. It's not a surface connection. It's not communication outwardly. It's not something being said to something else. It's an inner relationship. So that from within you feel constantly the connection with the divine, which is what we can always do. Today you say, I cannot speak to the mother, she is not physically there. You can commune with her at all times, she's always there. There's no moment when she's not there, there's no place where she's not there. In fact, in a sense, one might say that when her physical body withdrew from the world, it is as if she spread into the whole atmosphere, into the whole universal play of manifestation. The days were travelers on a destined road. This is how he really accepted life. Each aspect, each activity, each event was an opportunity for progress, for change. The days were travelers on a destined road.
The meaning of ransom, our spends were ransom because
Ransom, you have to pay a price. When you want something, you have to give it won't come for free, no? So you have to give a price. Often the price is pain. If you want anything in life, even on the surface, in the surface life, you want some kind of satisfaction. It won't come just like that. So there is usually a kind of a balance. Each experience has to come after the price of aspiration, effort, struggle. It doesn't come just like that. Even if it does come, you won't even recognize it because you're not ready for it. So this is how he accepts life. Life is not a smooth, straightforward road. It goes up and down, but when it goes down, it is a preparation to go up. So a heavenly impetus quickened all his breast. The original meaning of quick is something that is living. It is not something that is fast. That has come later. Quick is the word which is the opposite of the word dead. Dead. The quick and the dead. So something that is alive and that which gives energy. So if in our breast the aspiration, the love, the devotion is truly alive, what happens often is it becomes dormant. Dormant. You say, yes, I am a devotee of the mother and Sri Aurobindo. I worship them. You're not wrong, but you're not really truly right either. Because you take it as a matter of course. You take them for granted. If you give it really that life force, you have to be continuously in that state of inner communication. And that is why it is not easy, it is sadhana. Sadhana is effort. It's a discipline. It's not something that is just... religion does that. You once a day or twice a day or even 3 times a day, you may go to the samadhi and do your pranam and say, I've done the right thing. Yes, you have not done the wrong thing. But you may never go to the samadhi, but if you remain constantly in touch, you don't have to even go there. You feel the presence all the time. It's like somebody spoke to the mother about an individual who was a very good worker and mentioned that this person hardly comes for pranam. He never comes. So mother said, he is always in my consciousness. He is never far from me. He doesn't have to come. It is that inner communion. It is alive. We have to keep it alive. Even at night, mother was very particular about keeping it alive even when you sleep. She says, be conscious of your nights. We don't realize 1/3 of our lives is spent sleeping. So it's a big chunk of time. So
the sentence here also, the night's companions of his musing spirit, just the line.
Yes. The night's companions of his musing spirit. That is where he is in a state of, whether it is sleep or whether it is an inner connection with the divine, which is rest of the body but quietness and peace of the night. She has taught us how to sleep. She's spoken so much. Be conscious of your nights. This is an opportunity to remain really very open to her. But we sink very quickly into inconscience. The pull is very... So during the day you can make an effort and you do this and you do that, and even if you are very sincere and you offer all your activities to the divine, during the night the body takes over, tiredness takes over and you go down. That is the normal state. To remain, quieten the body and allow that inner peace and connection with the divine to take over. This is part of the yogic process. Musing is a form of meditation. A heavenly impetus quickened all his breast. The trudge of time changed to a splendid march. Otherwise, you see the whole movement of... There is evolution, it's very slow. It's walking, trudging. You take one step forward, one step backwards, two steps sideways, move again forward. And that is why century after century, the fundamental nature of man has not changed. But now if you really aspire, sincerity, aspiration, surrender, these are the basic qualities, then it becomes a march forward. The divine dwarf towered to unconquered worlds. The inner being, the inner divine presence, which is often unnoticed. It's not only the symbol of the Vaman avatar, but the psychic divine presence is compared to a being as big as your thumb, Angushta Praman it is said, just as big as your thumb. It's very easy to forget its existence. Deep behind your heart it is there. And in front are layers and layers of the vital nature, its desires and temptations, attractions, activities. So this inner presence remains within. But now that it is called out, we have to ask, this presence, the divine presence, comes out and you realize it is the supreme divine consciousness. And here you have a reference again to the avatar, the Vaman avatar, who filled the universe with his presence. So the divine dwarf towered to unconquered worlds, into not only the world of the manifest, the world of the future manifestation. That consciousness that leads us, that presence that guides us towards the future evolutionary manifestation. Earth grew too narrow for his victory. He is moving beyond. There are worlds upon worlds upon worlds. The consciousness rises. So life is the adventure of consciousness. This is the adventure of consciousness. It's the field of the adventure of consciousness. Earth grew too narrow for his victory. Once only registering the heavy tread of a blind power on human littleness, life now became a sure approach to God. This is the main sentence. Every experience of life becomes an opportunity to connect with the divine. That again is what is part of our daily life. You can do any work, any activity of life, you can make it an opportunity of connecting with the divine. If for you the divine is mother, connect with her. Whatever it doesn't have to be something that is experienced in quietude and silence and isolation. It's a field of energy, it's a field of expression, it's a field of work. This is part of the Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, they blend. Life now became a sure approach to God, if you make use of it. Otherwise, life was considered to be an obstruction, because it's a field of so many desires and so many activities, we forget the divine. You get caught up in all kinds of things, and there are demands, and there are all movements of the vital. And that is why in the Jnana Yoga you say withdraw as much as possible from the world of life. Here he says life is a sure approach to God if you know how to live it. That is the secret that she and Mother and Sri Aurobindo are giving us. Existence, a divine experiment. It is the life divine on earth. It is not a life divine in above the earth. There the divine consciousness is already there. To manifest it in the world. In the world of stone, in the world of life, in the world of mind, in the world of action and thought and feeling, in all the play of the possibilities of human expression. The human then grows beyond the human, manifests perfection, manifests beauty, art, joy. There is nothing that is not within an expression of the divine, if you can make it so. Of course, it is not easy. So there will be like an experiment, periods where it may seem to lead to failure, difficulties. They are also part of the game. And cosmos, the soul's opportunity, the whole play of the universal manifestation, which is the cosmos, is an opportunity for the spirit to manifest in matter. So this is the fundamental theme in Sri Aurobindo. Spirit is not separate from matter. Matter is spirit. Matter is housed in the world of... Spirit is housed in the world of matter. It is housed, it has to come out, it has to radiate, it has to transform the world of matter, because it is already there. This is the supramental change. In the world of matter, the spirit is there. So these are the first two chapters of the Life Divine. Sri Aurobindo speaks of the world of matter and how if you really have burst an atom, you get energy. So matter is not material. Matter is spiritual. Energy is spirit. It's a form of the spirit. So it is there. We fail to recognize this. So say this is the world of matter, that is the world of spirit. Religion takes these divisions, it simplifies its teachings. But the spirit is, nothing can exist if the consciousness were not there. If I realize it, if I manifest it, then it is an opportunity for me to manifest the inner divine presence that is also there in the body, in the vital, in the mind of the individual. So you can have what is the title of his great work, A Life Divine, on earth, not a life divine in some remote heaven. It's right here. So the world was a conception and a birth. First, it was as if part of a divine plan. Conception exists in your head. And then he put it into manifestation. What is this birth? Of spirit in matter, into living forms. He's summarizing the whole thing. The spirit has come down and is born in every living form. And those that don't seem alive also, but there the spirit seems more hidden. The spirit is present in the stone, the spirit is present in the star, it is in every atom. But in man, most of all, that is the special privilege. It is given a chance to emerge and transform the outer being so that it becomes worthy of expressing the divine. And nature bore the immortal in her womb. Nature is matter, nature is earth, body can manifest the soul. This is a supramental change. That she might climb through him. Yes? Which you read it?
Once only registering the heavy tread.
Yes.
For blind power on human littleness.
Yes.
Life no more.
Earlier, life was what? Simply a vital energy. How do we live? You have a physical vital energy and this energy seems to be the energy that is the apara prakriti, the blind unconscious force. There is force.
Heavy trade with the heavy.
Yes, it is not a conscious force. It is the same thing. But that same energy that is at work in the world of nature, where nature, for instance, breaks down the resistance of the mud to push a plant out of the soil. We don't see the struggle. We don't realize nature doesn't seem to know that she is doing such a difficult thing. She does it. Without knowing, there is this apara prakriti which does the work without realizing that she is doing an enormous work. Now, if you realize that you also can break your outer nature of dullness, ignorance, heaviness, and release and manifest the inner presence, your outer being can become an expression of your inner nature. And this is what he is doing. His being lay down in bright, immobile peace. The struggle was over, the realization has come, and bathed in wells of pure spiritual light. It wandered in wide fields of wisdom's self, lit by the rays of an everlasting sun. His entire being was illumined, body, life, mind, spirit, the whole being was lit by the sun of the highest truth. Even his body's subtle self within, because there is this world of the subtle existence. It is the outer existence is a projection of a subtle existence. Just like, say, in your mind, you have a form, say the form of a vase, and then you give that form a shape. The form becomes a shape. So that which was the form pre-exists the shape. So within us, there are these forces and forms and beings that project and are expressed in the outer world. So even the inner subtle self could raise the earthly paths towards higher things, because the resistance is greatest in the world of inertia, and matter is inert by definition. That's the very nature of matter. It is not so much there in life and mind, the inertia is less. But that subtle part is not inert. So it can make your physical nature also participate in the, we might say, forces of change. We do feel that sometimes. Even your body responds to things that are not physical. Your body, you can have, you tremble with joy or pain or sorrow or grief, which are not physical, you might say, experiences. So the body has the capacity to respond to things that are not physical. The body is not only physical. There are many capacities that are there in the body. This is the Sukshma Sharira, it is there. And so the body could raise the earthly paths towards higher things and feel on it the breath of heavenlier air. His journey is not yet finished, but it has gone a long way. Already it journeyed towards divinity. His body's journeyed towards divinity. The earthly path. Upbuoyed upon winged winds of rapid joy. Upbuoyed is, held up, like a buoy, B-U-W, that which holds up in the water. Upbuoyed upon winged winds of rapid. Wind is air in movement, so it is force. When air is consciousness, the field of consciousness, air in movement becomes conscious force. So upbuoyed upon winged winds, it's a guiding conscious force of rapid joy, upheld to a light it could not always hold. The journey is not yet finished, but he is moving towards that. It left mind's distance from the truth supreme. You see, we think mind is the possessor of truth. Mind is very far from the truth because mind has is capable only of holding one portion of the truth at a time. One part of the truth which my mind understands, I call true. The rest that my mind does not understand, I say is not true. I divide truth into little parts. And I choose one part and say this is right, and the other part is not. I call it wrong. So this is why if I follow the mind, I am always trapped in the field of error. He has gone beyond the mind. It left mind's distance from the truth supreme and lost life's incapacity for bliss. What life wants is ananda, and what it gets is not ananda usually. But he lost that incapacity for bliss. All now suppressed in us began to emerge. Suppressed by ignorance. This ignorance is gone. And so all the possibilities of perfection that are there in all now slowly begin to emerge. We are all, might say, capable of manifesting perfection. That is why if the universe is a school, it's a training place. Mother gave the name towards perfection, vers la perfection. That is what we are here for. So this is a beginning. It's not the end, it is just Canto 3. So we'll finish the canto next time.
Jumati, on the previous page, this struck me. I wanted to say that the world was a conception and a birth of spirit and matter, and then he says the nature bore the immortal inner womb.
Yes.
Means now the nature there it was conceived, and now nature is conceiving the.
It's because matter and spirit are the same. So nature becomes the mother of the spirit, which is what happens. The spirit is born in matter. And that is why the interplay. So if you call nature the Shakti, without the Shakti, the manifestation cannot take place. Sri Aurobindo has repeatedly told us that without the mother, my work cannot be done, my yoga cannot be done. She is the power of execution, of manifestation, of transformation. She, not he. He is the consciousness, she is the force. So she will make this consciousness manifest. So again and again he keeps on saying, turn to the mother.